Yeah, the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Philly Pulse, your city sports beat. I'm your host, Joe Stazak, along with co-host Sean Lochner and Micah Warren. And of course, we have a special guest joining us today, the one and the only Sam Sokolow. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be
Sam,
here.
Sam, you've been on the Philly Pulse exactly 7 seconds, and you're already the most famous and most intelligent Boston University graduate
Oh,
who's ever been on this panel.
Well, I try to go places where the bar is low.
yeah, but you found it.
You could trip over it here, my friend. You could trip over it here.
Welcome anytime.
So
So how
just
are
to,
you?
to
Besides, all right, let's get the obvious out of the way. You look like a young Ted Danson. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. You could probably start remaking Cheers again.
And I would love it. As a Boston University alum, I spent a good deal of time at Cheers throwing them back. And
Bull in the Finch.
definitely, as a matter of fact, I did a show, which we may segue into at some point, I'm sure. I did the first reality show starring Deion Sanders back in the day with Oxygen. And he only called me Malone. That was his nickname for me because of Sam Malone. He'd be like, Malone. That was the only way he ever referred to me.
Because you look like him?
I don't know why.
Doesn't he? Does he not?
No,
Oh,
if I tried to untangle Dion's thoughts, I'd still be there.
I had never thought that. My thought was I don't necessarily see it when I see Sam, but I see Sam when I see him as Mike D from the Beastie Boys. I don't know why.
That's definitely up my alley. In my little bookcase in my office, I have two Beastie Boys books. So
Well, you were in New York. You were from New York City, right? So you were there when they were blowing up.
when they first started. In fact, my brother went to high school with Ad Rock's older brother, Matt Horowitz, and tells a story that he was over there when they were practicing some punk music when they were in junior high. And he said, "You guys should look into this hip hop thing." So my brother always takes a little credit for the Beastie Boys.
Now, is that Alec?
Yeah.
So Sam's brother Alec wrote Toy Story. So
Yes. I was going to get to that, but God,
he's got good genes.
Yeah, he's the smart one in the family. I'm the low bar in our family.
Well, just to segue into that, for people that don't know, Sam produces an incredible show. I'm not saying this to kiss our guest's ass. Genius on Nat Geo. You don't have to be a history nerd, but if you are, it's must see TV. Even if you aren't, it's really, really well done. The first season, which they had a Super Bowl commercial for when Lady Gaga was the musical guest. The first commercial after Lady Gaga's performance was genius, and it had Jeffrey Rush with a violin playing a Lady Gaga song. I was like, that's pretty awesome. So Jeffrey Rush is the first season, which has how Sam got started, which if you want to explain how that process went, that's sure. Hooked up with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. The first season of Genius is Jeffrey Rush as Albert Einstein. The second season is Antonio Banderas as Picasso. The third season, you gotta love the Cynthia Erivo has been white hot. She just did Wicked, and she's Aretha Franklin in season three, which is fantastic. And then the fourth season just was a split between MLK and Malcolm X. It's all. I'm not saying you should watch it because Sam's here. I really hype it up to anyone that'll listen.
I'm saying you should watch it because I'm here. I'll jump right over that. No, I'll tell you, Cynthia, everyone involved in the show, from the writers to the directors of the episodes, obviously starting with Ron Howard directing the pilot episode of Einstein, all the way through production design. I mean, hair, makeup. It has been the greatest experience to work with people of that ilk and quality and world class talent across the board. And there's so many memories of the production and of the experience that keep besting each other. But I will say, the very first time when they were filming the Aretha season, it was during COVID, and not everyone was on set all the time. And there was an app on, that you get and download on your phone, an encrypted app where you get the dailies. So at the end of every day of shooting, they always do these things called dailies, where the producers and director can watch everything that was shot that day. The network executives give feedback, give thoughts, or just feel comfort that everything looks good. And the dailies would come on my cell phone, and I'd wake up early in the morning in LA, and they'd be there from the day before shooting. And the first time I listened to some takes of Cynthia Erivo, who sang the part of Aretha, I remember thinking, like, we're the production team. Why are they going into some studio and sweetening her singing for a dailies clip? And they're like, no, that's just her singing live on stage. in the soundstage.
Crazy.
And I'm
You
like,
got
I have
pipes.
never in my life. I mean, I'm just blown away. But again, Jeffrey as Einstein, and obviously Antonio, as Picasso was unbelievable. And I think every season has been, just a joy, just a treat. Our Malcolm X, Martin Luther King season was incredible. So couldn't be more proud of the show, and just thrilled to always get a chance to talk about it.
Sam, let me ask you something, Sam. I know you're a little older than I believe Micah, so I'm sure you've watched. When I hear Ron Howard, one, I think of Richie. I think of Opie, even before Richie Cunningham. So I grew up with that. And then all of a sudden it becomes, big time Apollo 13 and, The Grinch and all the other movies he wanted to direct. And he got out of acting, but megastar. What's it like working with him?
I'll use a little analogy as an actor, right? That there are maybe a small handful of actors on the planet at any given moment that can truly become something else. Like Daniel Day-Lewis can inhabit something else. But most actors have the incredible, I think it's the hardest job in the world. Most show up on time in front of 200 people or whatever and cry or be or emote. Most actors are able to tap into their true essence and be very real in the moment. And Ron Howard is the essence of Richie Cunningham and Opie. He is the absolute nicest human being and the most curious person that I've been around in a creative atmosphere. And when we were developing this, we based the first season off of Walter Isaacson's book, Einstein, His Life and Universe. And Walter is arguably the best biographer of our time, wrote the Steve Jobs book that became that film, wrote Leonardo da Vinci book that now Leonardo DiCaprio is developing. And when we talk with Walter about what makes genius, like, what do you think he did Ben Franklin. And he always says curiosity. The greater the curiosity, the greater the potential, the greater the mind. And I think Ron has this unbelievable curiosity, and he's so respectful, but he's just so smart. So working with him, again, was a joy, remains a joy. But when you're around him, you're literally like, this is the nicest person in the world. And it's pretty cool.
I think I remember you telling me years ago when we first talked that, because obviously I asked the same questions as they are, like about Ron Howard. And I think you had said something like, I always wondered, do I have to be a dick to succeed in this business? And then after working with Ron Howard, you're like, no, I don't. You can be a good guy and be successful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to be successful at what you love, pursue what you love, and be a good person that, you can look in the mirror yourself in the morning, that you can live with, that you feel has shown people the proper respect, that you're not in it for the wrong reasons. And there are some volatile people in this industry. There are volatile people in every industry.
On this show. Sorry.
Woody Hayes was, punching
Clemson players.
Charlie Bauman was his name.
And so,
and no, that's not ever gotten me a girl.
But I do take a lot of pride in trying to be a good, nice, honest, clear, clean person in my life, and being around guys like Ron, like you said, make it so much easier to know that it is about the work, it is about the experience, and it is about collaboration and doing it with the right spirit. And he I think is a North Star for that, for sure.
So Sam, I've always been, I just, your world fascinates me, and I always tell Micah, and I promise I'm not going to pitch anything.
Yeah, I was like, don't be pitching Sam on the.
I swear.
That's what I hear always right before a pitch. It's fast.
I'm going to kill his mic in a second, but go ahead.
I'm not going to pitch. I promise. No, what inspired you to get into your career?
Oh gosh, I mean the list is very long.
You kind of grew up in it, right? Your dad was.
Both my mom and dad. My dad worked in publishing around the time that I was born, so he was around the book world in New York, and that was continues to be a monster business, but was a monster business. The book industry, of course, always is, but before the internet, that was it. And my mom a little bit later in her trajectory, when I was maybe 4 or 5, they needed another income, wanted to get back to work, and she ended up becoming editor at a company that was run by a guy named Robert Stigwood, who went on to make Saturday Night Fever. He was a big music producer. And because of my father's relationships in publishing and my mom's, I think, unbelievable brilliance and knack for storytelling and recognizing what can be a good story, she ascended pretty quickly always in New York, but as an executive in the entertainment world. And when I was like 7 years old, she was the development executive at Warner Brothers in New York, overseeing a movie called The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. And I read the script, and then I would be given a few dollars in cab money when I got out of school because she was off on the set. My dad was working, and I'd go to visit her on set. They just stick me like in a trailer or somewhere where I couldn't get into too much trouble. But at an early age, being able to read a script and see it being brought to life, and streets in New York shut down, and trucks and people running around, I was just so taken with that as a little boy that I don't think I ever thought about doing anything else, literally ever.
Now, do you need a 47-year-old man to do that right now? Because I'm totally in.
The greatest thing about this industry to me, and there are many great things, there are many difficult things, but the greatest thing about the entertainment industry for me is that it is like a professional sport, in the fact that you have to work at it all the time. You have to train, as it were. You have to get up early. You have to stay up late. You have to sacrifice. You have to do all those things. But unlike a professional sport, you don't have to take somebody else's job to work. You can create a path for yourself. If you want to play in the NFL, you got to take one of these 53 jobs on a team. You want to play in the NBA, you got to take one of those 15 jobs, 12 seats on the bench to get in there. And in entertainment, it's kind of this ever expanding universe. And we've seen it expand so much in the last 10 years. So I think that it's never the wrong time. You're still 5 years younger than when Raymond Chandler published his first book. And he's my favorite, potboiler mystery writer. So, but I think it's a great industry that people could take part of. JD Spradling, who played the coach in North Dallas 40 and what was the One-on-One. He was like a successful businessman who went into acting in his 50s. So there's always time, Sean.
Don't for you yet, Lochner. Sam, let me
ask you. We're coming together, Joe. I feel it.
You mentioned there are difficulties in the industry, and I'd like to just ask you real quickly about them. But I always thought, a long time ago, right out of college, was involved in some commercials and extra, a couple of speaking parts. But I also know how it works, and I got a look, at least a very minuscule look. It's not what it looks like, the final product, obviously. And I've been on sets where it's taken 27 takes to do something that, all right, that looked pretty good to me, but obviously the director is looking at something else. And when I produce a piece, I get that. A lot of it's a hurry up and wait. A lot of it's, it's stop and start. A lot of it's not flow, but then the actors have to get into the same kind of mode when they're shooting it from a different angle, and you have to stop for a couple hours and they have to pick up. How hard is that for actors, and how hard is it for you, not being maybe necessarily an actor in a scene, but also someone who's dealing with all that time in between and you mentioned, how long it takes for a one-day shoot to maybe come up with a 5-minute scene. Like the scene in Almost Famous where they're singing Tiny Dancer, it took 2 days to shoot on the bus, which was 28 seconds of the actual movie. What's that like for you?
First of all, just to cover the acting part for a minute, it's one of the reasons I think acting really is the hardest job, because to be able to break down a script into emotional beats and then be able to call on those emotional beats based on a schedule that's being made to satisfy a budget and locations and all these other things. And you might be shooting the last scene of the film first out of order and have to create that emotional moment that you're then reverse engineering. I just think that's, I tip my hat to the actors that can really do that well. My wife is one of them, and I see her prepare and execute, and it's mind blowing to me. For me, and I'm writing my first book about this whole, not like a memoir, because who the hell am I, but about this experience and about how life and producing have taught me a lot of things. And one of the things that I distill this down to, that I've really come up with somewhat recently, as I've continued to think about it, and I teach a lot now, and education is a big part of what I do, which I'd love to talk about a little bit.
Yeah. Get into stage 32 when you finish this thought, for sure.
Is that, at least to be a producer, and I think that this goes with a lot of things, but certainly to be a producer, you have to exist in this really unique sort of, I don't want to call it Zen, or yin and yang is probably more appropriate, but it's like being at this heightened place of unbelievably aggressive and unbelievably patient at the exact same time. And that's what it is. You have to aggressively go after things, and you have to be patient at the same time. So as one little example, in an hour, I'm actually pitching a show to Fox Television Studios that we've developed. It's an idea that first percolated up about 7 years ago. We have been aggressively pursuing it, aggressively putting it together. We found the showrunner creator. It's based on someone. We made the deal with them. It's on their life. This has been 7 years of aggressively going after this, but at the same token, 7 years of being patient through a pandemic, through strikes, through the industry kind of evolving to now's the moment to pitch it. So I've been aggressively getting us here, but I've also had to be very patient. I think that's what it is. When you're on set and you might be in between things, one of the amazing things about production is that the hurry up and wait part may happen with certain moments in front of the camera, or certain moments, of course, along the way, but there's always something to prepare for the next moment. So is the next set being prepared? Is the next day being prepared? Is our parking permits ready? All of it. So as a producer, you're always thinking about, like, did we not mess anything up before? Are we ready for tomorrow? And is everything happening right now? So for me, I don't think there's ever really a moment of downtime. Not that I don't try to hang out at the craft service table and look cool eating all day long, but I think there's always so much to do and think about. That's what I love about it. I half joke, I'm a pillowphobe. I barely take aspirin. So my ADHD and OCD and everything, they're satisfied at all times. There's constant stuff to think about, worry about, and somehow
a lot of stimulation, colors,
somehow
movement.
It's a happy place.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
So in terms of getting into the business, I want you to be able to plug one of your new ventures, which is Stage 32, which, as you've described to me, it's a great way to go to learn the below the line positions from industry professionals online. You and I went to BU. Fantastic, but we know what that costs. And you can go to NYU Film School. Our buddy Jeff Fisher went there. I'm sure it's a really great way to learn from people that do it, from the pros. And it's much more accessible because you can do it all through online. You talk about it. I don't just
No. I mean, look, I'm a real fan of education. I'm a fan of teaching this industry. I think that it's not only one or the other. I think that there's a great place for film schools and growing a film school. I teach at Clemson University right now. I teach film, but film schools, by their very nature, don't really teach the specific below the line jobs that are needed by production communities all over the world. I've been working with Stage 32 for about 3 years. It's a 12-year-old company founded by a guy named Richard R.B. Botto, incredibly smart guy, incredibly talented guy, writer, actor, producer. And he's grown Stage 32 over 13 years to this entity now. It's a social community. It's an education platform. Forbes magazine calls it the LinkedIn for the entertainment industry. And I was brought in by RB and the managing director, Amanda Toney, to help build this vision they had for a certification program to help, build crew bases around the world. And we built the Stage 32 certification program. And literally, we just trained 20 people in Pittsburgh in production accounting, specifically to work on new projects that are coming into Pittsburgh, like Mayor of Kingstown. And they just announced this big Hershey's limited series. We just trained a bunch of people in Hawaii to help, bolster their crew base. Basically, the way the film industry works today on the production end, which is why you hear about production happening all over the world, is these communities are passing these tax incentives trying to lure the Disneys and the Netflixes and the Amazons or the HBOs or what have you to come shoot their Game of Thrones there, their Diplomat there, or their Marvel movie there. But you also need to have a healthy crew base in that local place because they don't want to send every production accountant and production coordinator and production assistant. So who's training those people to be good at this work day one? And that's an area that Stage 32 certification has really taken and excelled. And, you know, again, we've done programs in Uganda, Africa. We're announcing one soon in the Middle East. We've worked in Croatia and Poland and Costa Rica. It's really exciting to be able to feel like you're affecting people's lives and helping prepare them for a career in the industry, like Micah said, online, cost effectively from anywhere in the world. And
not subject to tariffs?
Not yet. You never know what's coming next. I haven't refreshed my phone in 10 minutes, but you know, right now they haven't figured out a way to tariff knowledge. So hopefully they never do.
Well, just so people know, like a lot of times, like you were talking about all the different locations. If something's set in a city, I can almost promise you it's not shot there. My favorite example is, remember Jackie Chan's Rumble in the Bronx? Just so you know, there's not a mountain range behind the Bronx.
Yeah, I mean,
continuity error.
Shows go where they have to go, and interestingly enough, though, one of the greatest editors in history, when he did his little pie chart on the priorities of editing, 51% is emotion, and everything else is continuity and continuation. And when you tune into stuff like that, you guys remember the movie Empire? The Empire Strikes Back, the second Star Wars movie in 1981. There's the famous moment that I think every young man certainly was like, "Oh, that's the coolest thing," when Han Solo is about to get frozen in the cryogenic freeze or whatever, and Princess Leia says, "I love you," and he says, "I know," and then goes down there. The wide shots, he's wearing no vest, and in the close-ups, he's wearing a black vest. But you don't know because you're so caught up in the emotion of it. So, you know, and the emotion is really how editors make their decisions, and they assume if the audience sees something a little out, it's what they call an Easter egg. It's a little moment. In Hitchcock's North by Northwest, there's a moment where they fake a murder in a big cafeteria near the Mount Rushmore Monument. And if you watch it enough, at some point you see a little boy sitting at one of the tables, put his fingers in his ear before the gun goes off, because obviously it's the fifth take and he's had this gun go off. So, you know, you notice these things over time, but I don't think they take away from the magic.
That's the best part. It kind of makes, I've seen blooper reels, like there's a bowl of cereal in a Munsters episode where the dragon's coming out of the stairs and there's a kid's eating cereal, a bowl of cereal. And there's a major in the Year Without a Santa Claus. At the end, when Mother Nature's telling the Miser Brothers, things happen. Things just happen but that to me, that's the best part. Kind of makes it real. Kind of makes it.
I found one of the things pretty interesting. Do you remember the show Bloodline with Kyle Chandler?
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was filmed in the Keys, and I think there was something about Florida was going to tax a little bit. There was something regarding taxes and filming, and if I remember correctly, they decided to end the show premature because they felt it couldn't get filmed anywhere else. Which
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't read up on why that happened, but you know, one of the things that we talk about all the time, both in the Stage 32 work and when I'm teaching students at Clemson and preparing them to go off into their careers, is, you know, always remember simple math. The word business is twice as long as the word show. And so the business is going to drive decision making. It's going to drive. I just read a thing. I mean, my heart breaks for Los Angeles right now in a lot of ways because so much production is leaving LA, but it's not leaving the planet Earth. It's going elsewhere. There's more production happening now than ever. But, you know, Rob Lowe is hosting a game show, and they did a cost analysis, and it was less expensive to shoot the entire game show and send all the contestants over to Europe than it was to shoot it in LA.
Wow.
And so, you know, those things need to be evened out. I also know people in Los Angeles and in California that work at the big guilds like the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild, and they're working with the state and trying to increase the tax incentive and the ease of shooting and keep people in LA and compete. And I expect they'll figure that out and should and will. But the almighty dollar makes a lot of these decisions. And at a certain point, there's someone sitting in these studios that says, oh, it costs $80 million to do it here, and it only costs $60 million to do it there. And that decision gets made.
Sure.
Sam, let me try to, and we'll continue to talk about Hollywood because this is fascinating. I can do this for 3 hours at least. The rest of us could too, but you're a Giants fan. And
yeah, I was going to say, I feel like you guys are pushing off the fact that we had such a great draft.
You did.
All right. Phenomenal
but
draft.
I do have to say this, and again, I'm not trying to kiss up to our guest, who happens to be a friend and colleague of mine, that he, before the draft, Sam, I don't even remember what I was texting you about. It was something else. And I said something like, well, what are you going to do tonight? And you knew what that meant. I mean, anybody that's a junkie knows if somebody says that to you on draft day, they know what you mean. And he's like, I want Abdul Carter. He's like, and he went on, I won't say all of it, but a brief diatribe. Shadur's a 3rd-round pick. He's a marketing made guy. And at the time, what's funny, Sam, I thought you were wrong then because I was like, 3rd? Was he nuts? He might drop out of the 1st, but 3rd, please. And then after the draft, I realized you were wrong, but for a completely different reason that I thought you were wrong originally. He went to the 5th. But then so Sam texted me after it was because he said we'll get a quarterback coming back 2nd. Jackson Dart. And then he said, let me see if I know this team. Defensive tackle, O-line, running back. They went defensive tackle, running back, O-line. And as I think I texted you, Sam, I was talking to Sean Landetta, your former punter with the Giants, 2-time Super Bowl award, Super Bowl champion. And I told him what you did. He goes, oh, man, serious? I was like, yeah, he nailed the draft. And I have to like give him credit for this. Like that was really, really impressive.
it was impressive, but I kind of wanted to do a little big picture because you're a Giants fan. 4 Super Bowls, not recently, but 4 Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowls. But I mean, since then, I mean, how hard is it? What's harder, getting a show greenlit or trying to watch your Giants get out of their own way in the NFC East?
Well, I honestly, they're not apples to apples, right? I mean, I get like one is a career and a passion, and one is a lifetime kind of commitment to a team. They're different. The Giants have been there with me when shows get passed on, when shows get canceled. They're my.
But it has been tough lately. I know they made a real big thing of the Saquon Barkley because he went nuts, but probably wasn't even a prudent move to give a lot of money to a running back when you still couldn't figure out the quarterback and you had offensive line problems. So I mean, I think the media made a much bigger thing of that.
Yeah, but also look, things aren't finite, right? So just to answer your question, I compartmentalize these things a little bit, but very quickly, my analogy to getting a TV show on the air, I always say, is like climbing Mount Everest, and it's extremely hard. You can do it, but it's really hard, and it's really about what do you arm yourself with. Could somebody climb Mount Everest in sandals and shorts? Can't say no, but it's very improbable. But if you have a show that you put together with a great team, maybe from a great source material, like a book, like we had with Walter's book, or the woman that we're basing the show on, I'm pitching, later on today, and you have certain elements together, you're increasing your odds. And you have you don't have control over all of it, but you have a little control over how you prepare and go. As a fan, you're really along for the ride. And you can have an opinion and you can bitch and moan and all the things that you can do as a fan, or celebrate and be thrilled, but you're really along for the ride. And I think that one of the things about being a Giants fan, I think everybody that's a big fan of their team has this to a certain degree, but certainly with a Giants fan, you feel like you're sort of part of the company. It's like Big Blue. You're part of IBM. You punch the clock, you go in every day. I'm going to be a fan today for the Giants. And some days the returns are great and some days the returns aren't, but I'm in it for the gold watch for the rest of my life. And you take the good and the bad. And those 4 Super Bowls that we won were magical. They were magical seasons. You remember everything about them, as I know Eagles fans now do with the 2 rings you've won in the last several years. And I certainly was rooting for you against the Patriots. And found myself pulling against the Chiefs. It was like, it's keep it in the division. It's like we're in it together. I can't say I do that with the Cowboys, but it is certainly a different emotional plane. As a fan, the Giants are so definitional to me. I'll spare everybody. You have pictures of you with your shirt off. I won't do that to anybody, but I actually do have a Giants tattoo right here. I got it after 9/11. Actually, I just moved to LA, and I was like, I need New York on me, and that NY, that lowercase New York Giants NY is my favorite New York. I felt it. It's what I did with my dad. It's what I do with my brother and my best friends. We text constantly and all through the games. So when they're bad or they're not performing well, it's frustrating, but it's still 3 hours a week, 16, 17 times a year that you get to analyze things. You get to show your commitment. You get to show your, I guess, loyalty through the tough times. And even my wife is like, why are you watching this right now? And I'm like, well, because when they win, it's going to be worth it. And I want to see what's wrong and what they do. Specifically, when it comes to Saquon, you have to be analytical about things, or I am analytical about a lot of things. And life is not apples to apples. And, take Genius as just one last example. If we had sold Genius to HBO, it would have been a very different show than doing it with National Geographic. Sure. And that family and their high bar of factuality and visual beauty and all those things that Nat Geo was a great brand. And if Saquon Barkley was on the Giants last year, I don't think he has that season. We have a different line. We have a different
absolutely not.
I have a friend who's one of the bigger sports writers in the country, and he texted me several times just saying, just calm down, just know he's 900 yards, probably injured for 4 games, and 8 touchdowns, maybe if he's a Giant.
Sam, you had him for 6 years. I mean, nothing happened for 6 years. You had him. And he was not going to do on the Giants what he did he was not just the cherry on top. It was an apple-sized cherry on top of that roster.
Without question. He was a perfect fit at the perfect team for the perfect moment. And look at what happened in the Super Bowl. I mean, the Chiefs showed all year they were a last-second win more than not team, but they weren't the same juggernaut they had been. And the Eagles kicked their ass up and down the field for 60 full minutes. And that's Saquon got to be a part of something like that. I am happy for him and thrilled that Eagles fans got to eat as much horse shit as they could possibly shovel into their mouth that night and fall.
There was no reports of horse shit being eaten.
Maybe not on where you read, but I'm kidding. But no, I mean, I was happy for him but I think the Giants had to move on. I think they really had to move on.
I agree with you.
I agree with that.
And right now it feels like Joe Schoen has done that. There was a descent. He managed us through the descent. We got rid of all that albatross contract stuff he inherited
from Gettleman. Yeah.
And he's kind of deftly moved us, even though it's been frustrating, into this place now where at the very least Giant fans and I am filled with a tremendous amount of optimism and see an identity brewing that, as I said to Mikey, you can't tush push all the way down the field. There's a defense now you got to deal with the Giants. And I'm excited about that.
But just think if the Giants weren't HBO last year, think if it was another team, how the story would have never happened. Right? Don't you think?
I think that the team who let him go with that little sequence with the GM and the owner.
Well, that's his point. Is if it wasn't on HBO,
a much bigger thing in the same division, and where he came from, and he wanted to be a Giant all his life. And I think it was made too much. I think it was the right decision, to be honest with you, for the Giants to let him go.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see who wins next, and we'll see if the Giants can actually put a product on the field. It's been a rough 10 years. I mean, we were joking, me and a bunch of my Giant fan friends yesterday, about the fact that, like, isn't it refreshing to have meaningful football in April? It's been a long time since we've had a really good season. I mean, 22 was terrific, and I think shows maybe what the coaching staff can do. Sure. But, and again, these are degrees, and you're not rooting against human beings. You're just looking at a team. But, Daniel Jones was, I think, the real mistake, committing to him.
He had him bent over a barrel after that season, though.
Well, he wins a playoff game in Minnesota. Looked good doing it, but it was historically a bad defense. So it looked a little better. And then, he wasn't a $50 million quarterback, but they gave him $40 million for 4 years. That really put them in a little bit of a bind, because Saquon's like, whoa, what's up with this?
Yeah, and again, I don't know Daniel Jones, so this isn't a personal thing. This is a fan looking at a player. But a 500 quarterback at Duke, you're not talking about some blue chip, Alabama, USC, LSU super quarterback. He's a 500 quarterback at Duke. The season we did beat Minnesota in that game, he threw 15 touchdown passes. Mahomes does that
15-6 that year. Yeah.
Mahomes does that by the end of September.
Right.
So I never saw
Wasn't
the
prolific.
numbers adding up, but maybe in some way it was just their general way of moving forward. And now, that's the fun thing about sports fandom. It's like, the guy that introduced Mike and I always says, etch a sketch your head. New deal,
for sure.
New moment. We got a new team. We feel like there's some identity there. I'm excited for Jackson Dart's future, but even having a capable quarterback room right now with some veterans, I'm expecting it to be a more competitive year, certainly.
Well, do you?
Go ahead.
Okay, good. I don't mean to use the Eagles as an example because that's who I follow, but Howie Roseman is in a unique position that he's earned, where he can look 3 years down the road. He makes decisions for 3 years down the road. We have to let Josh Sweat and Milton Williams go. I got to look at Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, that Nolan Smith. These guys are all going to get mega paid. So I have to start planning for that. Are you concerned as a Giants fan? Shane really can't do that. There was a lot of people that thought he and Dable should be gone after last year. He certainly is in a you better show me something this year. Does that bother you that he really can't look those 3 years down the road? Because he might be out of a job by this time next year.
He might. I think that Dart buys them a little time. Now they got their guy. They can kind of say, this is our team now, and this is our guy we're going to develop. Even just from self-preservation, it looks like they managed that intelligently for their own bottom lines as people, Shane and Dable. But, you say that, and in another breath, you're always talking about the draft, but Andrew Thomas went right as one of the best left tackles in the game. Dexter Lawrence is already the best defensive tackle in the game. These guys are locked up for another 4 or 5 years. There's young talent there. And, what Howie Roseman has built, maybe in a couple of years, we can look at and say, hey, there's great young talent, and we can look ahead and play that more varsity version of football than we've been playing, which is chasing a little bit of relevance again. We'll see.
The quarterback room. Okay, so you bring in not one but two veterans, and one's kind of I don't even know what you call James, because he can be.
Which one are you talking about?
Yeah, he can be up here. He could be here. Russell Wilson was 7-2 until the last 5 games of the season last year, and didn't make a good showing for him. Didn't acquit himself real well in Denver, but he still has a Super Bowl ring. He's been to 2. And then you bring in the quarterback from Mississippi State. What would you like to see them do with the quarterback situation this year? Because the executives, you got Shane and Dable, are told we need wins now, but we also need our quarterback of our future that Mr. Merritt kind of laid that, and they did. They did a nice job handling that in the draft, but going forward, to get some wins on the board, you probably would start Russell Wilson, but when does Dart get to see game action?
Well, I think it depends on how well the team plays and how well Russell Wilson executes, right? So, and it was Ole Miss, not Mississippi State.
Yes, that's right.
I only know that because my wife's best friend's dad is like the Ole Miss president of the Booster
Eli
Club.
Manning's old school.
You've been giving me the inside scoop that they're all excited about Dart. So, but, I think given where we are in time, and as you said, the need to win, the pressure from ownership, Marin Tisch, the fan base. I mean, again, we're only a couple months removed from guys flying planes around the stadium saying, get rid of everybody. So
I was just going to reference that.
Having a little bit of optimism is a good thing. And look, there's no perfect science from going from, sucky to good, right? You have to kind of figure it out. And I think that the way I see it, for whatever it's worth, Russell Wilson's on a 1-year contract. So it's basically, you're coming in here a little bit like Kurt Warner did when they drafted Eli. You're going to be a veteran presence. You've won a Super Bowl. Russell Wilson's career stats are pretty terrific. Can't do certain things he used to do, but he can still do certain things. He can throw the moon ball, read defense as well. I mean, for a guy that went to Duke, Daniel Jones couldn't read, right? So it was awful. So, I think Russell Wilson can play in a more intelligent version of football. and hopefully push that team to close to a 500 record as everybody matures and you give Dart some time. If something happens with Russell Wilson, then you have Jameis Winston, who, maybe not the most consistent pro, but again, if you look at the back of the baseball card, every couple of years has a pretty stellar year.
Best pregame speeches in the league.
And, and certainly is a personality made for New York. I expect that dude to have a talk show before it's all over because he's one of the funniest guys like on earth. And the way I'm envisioning it, which only, counts for me sitting around thinking about it, is Russell Wilson is there to try to make them more competitive this year. And Jameis is actually there to be the mentor to Dart. And I think with no disrespect to Russell Wilson, he kind of tends to be in his silo and is that guy. And I think Jameis has a little bit more of an open approach to things. I think that Jameis is going to be mentoring Dart a little bit more on how to be a pro, how to prepare, how to do those things while Russell Wilson's trying to win games. Something goes sideways with Russ, then Jameis will probably step in because they're paying him to do that and protect the Fabergé egg that you just drafted and give him the Mahomes quote unquote thing of a little time to mature. And then if we're, 2-13 again, and there's 2 games left, then you give Dart some game action and really start playing for the future. But hopefully we're not in that position. Hopefully we're competitive enough that the games are interesting. The other young players are finding themselves getting a little bit better. This rookie class is getting a little better. Last year's is getting a little better. And Dart can sit for a year and really learn under these veteran quarterbacks. But I think Jameis will have him really under his wing, like a crab claw.
Well, I think if Russell plays even average or above average, I don't see why you can't win 9 games. That's a huge jump from 3?
Yeah.
But I think that's achievable.
I love that the NFL East is getting competitive again. And the
with Carter, don't forget Brian Burns. Thibodeau, they picked up his 5th-year option. You said Dexter Lawrence. Offensive line, I don't know how to help you. I mean, I don't even think Evan Neal's going to play at any position this year.
Yeah, but
I don't think they're going to pick up his 5th year either.
But again, I'm look, it's always great to be optimistic this time of year, but again, if he comes back healthy, Anthony Thomas is one of the best tackles in the game. Mm-hmm. Sign John Runyon, to be the guard next to him. Michael Schmitz, if he kind of plays well and plays like a 2nd-round draft pick and in his 3rd year really holds down that position. The kid Mebo, I don't know how to pronounce it, MBOW, that we drafted, there's a little bit of competition there now at right guard. And we have a right tackle that played decent at the end of the year. So I'm not saying that this is like, the Hogs in the 80s, but there's a better offensive line on paper right now than the Giants have had in 5 years. And so
that's a big deal. If
the defense can keep teams to 21 points, can we score 22 points? That'll be the test every week.
Surprised no one's brought up Malik Neighbors, who in his first year with Daniel Jones for most of the year, and then Paulie Walnuts and a version of whoever else they threw in there at 109 catches. Incredible. I know they selected him instead of maybe a quarterback last year, but he's going to be phenomenal. Another LSU phenom, and I think he's obviously going to help whichever quarterback is back there. But you mentioned right at the top of the show, and I got to ask you this because the only thing most people are talking about is the Shedeur Sanders situation. Now, when you guys traded back up in the draft and then you took Dart, which I thought they were going to take Dart. I always liked him. I like 6-year quarterback. I like playing for Lane Kiffin and in that system. I always thought he was better than a lot of people gave him credit for. Sanders, I thought was okay. The story of the draft is he lasted till the 5th round. And a lot of things are now coming out about maybe his attitude in the interviews and just the overall way he carried himself, or maybe it's just not all that good. But then there's the Deion factor, the father factor, how initially he said, well, we're going to dictate terms and who he plays for. And then kind of towards the draft said, no, anyone could draft him. You know him pretty well, Deion. How much of the Deion factor went into Shedeur, do you think, that ended up going from a top 5 pick till he left the Browns, who already had 3 quarterbacks in the room and another quarterback.
4. Yeah. Well, I'll get to that but the silly joke that one of my friends said was like, when the Browns called, that was the second prank call. Now you're but
Love that.
I can't say that Deion and I are like super close and know each other that well. We did a show together in, I think it was 07, together, 06 or 07. So it's been a long time. But, there's obviously, this was a big story. And I have no issue with Shador. Again, another one of my best buddies' daughter goes to Colorado. Another one of my buddies' kids goes to Colorado. They were at every game. They flew out all the time. I was getting all these things. They're very high on Shador. Obviously, you have a guy like Travis Hunter. To me, the reason I told Micah that I think he's more of a third-round pick fell to 5. And you got to remember, right? I mean, this becomes a story, but these are massive investments. You're still talking about one of the top 200 players on the planet coming out and getting drafted. I think sometimes stories get manufactured around stuff. Now that this is a 3-day television media event, they got to find things to report on. With Shador, my thought, again, for whatever it's worth, was there's a concept that I talk about a lot when I'm teaching, which is the difference between a greenhouse flower and a forest flower. And a forest flower is like a dandelion. Might not be the most beautiful flower, might have a little holes in the leaves or a little brown around the edges, but it can grow in any weather, And a greenhouse flower is an orchid. It's the most beautiful thing in the world, but it needs a stick. It needs a certain humidity. It needs a certain care. Shador, when we were doing the show with Deion way back when, he was coaching Shador when Shador was 7 years old, playing quarterback in Pee Wee football or Pop One or whatever that was. He followed him to junior high, followed him to high school, both colleges. That doesn't take anything away from Deion as a coach or a genius when it comes to the game, but Shador's been in a greenhouse. This stuff has been built around him. That in itself is like, well, what happens when he's out of the greenhouse in a new system with a new coach? That's just one thing. Second, they talk about the toughness. Well, the toughness is based on getting up after getting hit, which means you're getting hit a lot. There is the tape don't lie, as they say. So he does hold on to the ball, try to make plays. That's awesome in college, sometimes a liability in the pros, So these are little things that I think allow him to kind of, when you look at him, even the thing about, like when I read the basic, this had nothing to do with me. When I just read the kind of coach's review of him, and it's like, not the greatest athlete with the greatest escapability, not the strongest arm, incredibly tough and incredibly accurate and a really good decision maker. And for some reason that came through to me as like, okay, so he's Chad Pennington. Now the Jets won with Chad Pennington. They won some games, but are you spending the second, third, fourth pick in the draft on Chad Pennington? Or are you developing that quarterback a little bit later? And I think Shador, take away the name, take away the hype, the talent itself felt to me more second, third round talent, which is still great, right? That's not like terrible. We're talking degrees and investment and the 5th-year option and all the things that make somebody a first round pick. Then you add in the media hype, you add in the cameras following everywhere, you add in the fact that a coach or an owner has to accept that the cameras are on his dad. His dad's going to have a monster microphone. I think a lot of these things go into decisions of what are you trying to bring into the building? What's the culture you're trying to build? And then you end up with the Cleveland Browns in desperate need of an identity, in desperate need of a young quarterback to build around.
Anything.
Have all that. It's actually a terrific landing spot for him where he can thrive and maybe become, if he makes a difference in Cleveland, I mean, that's making a difference. And so I'm rooting for him. I think the whole world is rooting for him now. And I think maybe if he got picked with the second, third, fourth pick in the draft, the whole world might not be rooting for him now. So even that story's turned very quickly. But I think that being the story of the draft and then having a good career in the NFL are two completely different things. Whatever direction you're looking in, paging Tony Mandrich. So it's like, I think Shador's look, Deion's a good guy. He's a good dad. I remember when we were working together, Deion had it in his contract at the NFL Network when he was on the NFL Network doing the Sundays that he was on a Sunday night plane the minute they wrapped, because he drove his kids to school Monday morning. You know, he's a loving guy. He's a caring dad. He's on it, and he's got 2 kids in the NFL. And anybody that wants to read negativity into that somehow, I think is doing it, is finding it. But Shador's got his chance, like everybody else, and he's got to prove it. But I think almost all that stuff worked against him a little bit in the fact that if he was a super high draft pick, then the hype gets exponentially heightened, and the hype that he already brings to the table explodes, and then the reality shows and the this and the that and all that. And so, you know, if he can focus on football and do all those right things, and even being in a media market, for lack of a better term, like Cleveland, I think all those things are actually in his favor. And I think being in New York or under the big microscope and being a high draft pick, you know, might have put expectations on him that who knows, a year or 2 in, who knows what that would have done. So, you know,
and to put a bow on that, and it's something Louis Riddick said when he was trying to calm Mel Kiper down, who just took it like a personal affront that this guy slid. It was kind of embarrassing. And Louis Riddick just put his head down and he said, "Mel, the draft is spoken." And I was like, you can say that for any NFL draft. That works forever. Say what you want. The draft spoke. This is what it was. And you know what? Everything we just talked about, his slide, doesn't matter now. None of it matters. It's going to matter in his paycheck for sure. But if you can play now, you can play. It doesn't matter where you were taken.
And you show me, look, there's 32 GMs and 32 coaches in the NFL. It's one of the hardest jobs on the planet to get. You think somebody's fucking around because of anything else than what's going to help them win? No. Mm-hmm. So that's, like you said, the draft spoke. It's like kind of a Parcells. You are your record.
Yes.
Right? He's a mid-round draft pick. And I hope he thrives in the NFL. I hope he leads Cleveland to the playoffs. Everyone will be rooting for him now. And I think that's an interesting result of all of that.
I mean, there's oh, go ahead, Sam.
No. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, there was a report out there that Cleveland jumped the Eagles because the Eagles were thinking about taking him. So
there was a rumor, I think Ian Rappaport said it was kind of well known, because you guys know the NFL. Once you start making phone calls on draft day to 1 or 2 teams, the whole NFL knows what you're trying to do. It's a huge pipeline of information.
Sure.
And Ian Rappaport said it was kind of well known at that point that if he's there, the Eagles want
And by the way, you know, as a fan, and you guys are obviously elevated fans, thoughtful, you know, really into it.
We gave you the wrong impression.
No. I mean,
what gave it away?
But really, right? So we know how important the trenches are, right? We know how important the offensive line is and the defensive line, and the 2-time national champion, Outland Trophy winner, center for Ohio State doesn't even get drafted. Mm-hmm. He's an unsigned free agent. So it's not an exact science, and a lot of talent falls, and then a Brock Purdy will happen, and you know, where does that guy come from? Like I said, he's drafted, he's in. To me, that's the story. And now they can recalibrate how they want to present media around it. I think a little bit, but you know, I'm happy for him. And it's interesting, just as a love of football thing. You know, I teach at Clemson University now. Growing up in New York City, I didn't really have a college team. You know, we
don't either. We have Penn State, which is halfway across the state.
But it's not like the Columbia Lions are really something to wake up on Saturday for, you know? And so I married a South Carolina Gamecock, became a huge Gamecock fan. I mean, it was like unfettered snow. I was like, oh, I now have a college football identity. And now to be teaching at Clemson made such an interesting dynamic. And I become such a Saturday guy. And I love college football.
It's religion down there.
Oh, my gosh. It's unbelievable. And I think it allows me to become a better fan across the board, and certainly be even more prepared for the drafts, because I know college football so much better than I ever had. And I'll always be a Gamecock fan at heart, but rooting for a program like Clemson and what Dabo does. And I mean, it's really infectious. So that's been a really cool additive part of my life. And I'm a consultant with the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame. We just had our induction ceremony, and I was telling Mike, I just got to spend when I say we, I'm a new consultant with them. The Football Hall of Fame in South Carolina, which covers high school, college, and pro. and is really an organization that encourages good values and young people and all that. It's wonderful. Deuce Staley was just inducted 2 weeks ago. So I just spent a couple hours with Deuce talking football with him, talking South Carolina football, but talking Philadelphia Eagles football and Pennsylvania football. And, it's really fun to now also see it on this side where he's a coach. He's he's a master of the game and a teacher and all those things. And so it's fun to see the game full circle a little bit right now, I will say.
And Stazak, you worked with Deuce years ago, didn't you?
I
Fox
did.
or something.
I've seen him go. He was. I'd say I did a piece with him in terms of a scouting piece on the opposing defenses, and with Troy Vincent on the opposing offenses, and we worked together. And Troy knew everybody, Deuce knew no one. But again, as an offensive guy, you're not really doing a ton of homework on. You're worrying about your holes that you're hitting and who your assignments are. But as it went on and he got older, and then next time I interviewed him was in Arizona the night before the Eagles played the Cardinals when Kurt Warner was there, and the Cardinals went to the Super Bowl to play the Steelers. I interviewed him. He was a coach with the Eagles, totally different guy, very, very much thoughtful. He wasn't the kid anymore. And I always give a lot of slack to youth because as you get older, look, we did dumb things, we said stupid things, did childish things at times. You mature and you get wiser, and he was much more mature and talked in coach speak and was very professional. And not saying he was unprofessional back then, but he was a player. He was kind of like, this is great. I'm a player now. I make a lot of money. And what do you need? All right, I'll give you a standard soundbite. That guy, he's a nose. He always used to say, he's a nosy around the football. Everyone was nosy around the football. He never knew anyone's name, but everyone was nosy around the football. So that was a joke with us. But he became much more mature with Andy's crew, and actually had some opportunities to be an offensive coordinator. But I just got a chance to see when he was young to when he kind of transformed into, like, he became a man. You know what I mean? And was much wiser.
The guy I met 2 weeks ago was a sage. And a loving dude, and was so appreciative of everything that had happened to him on his journey.
And you get that way when you appreciate. Sometimes things are taken away from you too quickly, and then you really appreciate what you had when you look back on it. And now he's really embracing what he's doing now. He's doing
it's cool.
Congratulations.
I had a funny moment there because Troy Brown was another one of the guys that was inducted into the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame the other week. And I remember when he first walked in the room, and I looked across the room, and I'm like, Giants beat your ass in the Super Bowl, and I can't wait to and by the time I kind of met him, it had been made clear to me that no, he's a Giants coach right now. He's on the Giants coaching staff, and I was like, Troy,
right? Oh, it's totally different. Absolutely, it's a totally different.
My man,
totally. Well, dude,
I do want to be mindful of Sam's time here because he's got a show to pitch.
I got to go in a few minutes because I'm actually pitching a TV show in about 10 minutes.
Good luck to you, my friend.
This is your preparation for pitching a TV show?
What'd you say?
This is your preparation?
Listen, if I could prepare for every pitch of my life doing this, I would do it.
Well, Sam, I think I speak for the guys. Whenever you want to come on, you're more than welcome. I mean, I could talk to you for another 2 hours.
Tell you what, why don't we, if you need a guest, the Tuesday after the Giants Eagles play next.
Done.
Put me in. No matter what happens, we'll talk it down. We'll break it down. We'll see where everything is at the moment. But again, thank you guys so much. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk a little bit about Clemson University, about the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame, about Stage 32 and all the great production work. But most importantly, the opportunity to talk football is a dream come true for me. So I hope to be back.
Well, we appreciate it, Sam. What are you pitching the Fox right now?
Gosh, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that.
Okay.
Joe. We're pitching a 1 hour procedural, which is like CSI or Law and Order, a show about a kind of a law enforcement type of show where there's a new case every week and a couple of cases that will go several episodes. But it's after doing Genius for the last chapter. And I'm actually going to say this in the pitch. This is my kind of opening spiel, so I'll try it out here. To be a subjective genius, spoiler alert, you have to be dead. you've lived a life. You're deceased, and now we're doing Einstein's life, or we're doing Picasso's life. And I really wanted to do a show, and have been hungry to do a show where we stay with a character over time, and that character has a long-term relationship with the audience over multiple seasons. And this is a show that, if we're blessed enough to get a chance to do it, it'll do that, because this character won't do something incredible with their lives, impact society, and die every 8 episodes. So,
greenlit. It's greenlit. Have your people call my people.
Yes.
everybody's people will call everybody's people, but all I know is now you guys are my people. So I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
Sam, I worked for Fox for 13 years. Don't mention my name, and you should be good, my friend. So
got it. So mention your name.
No, don't mention my name. No, you're good.
No, I got it. All right, guys. NFC.
Appreciate it, Sam.
All right.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care, pal. Appreciate it. Sam Sokolow. He was phenomenal, guys.
That was
Great
great.
get, Micah.
Oh, my God, it was
I
so
told you,
fun.
it was actually went even better than I thought. He's full of just cool information. He knows his
Cool,
stuff.
cool dude. Just a
Yeah.
cool dude.
And generally good guy, man. He's awesome.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that was awesome.
We try to go 30 minutes, almost to the 60-minute mark. Good job, guys. All right, I'm gonna put this up very shortly. We'll cut it up and we'll rock and roll.
We're still
Thank you for
recording.
watching once again for Micah Warren and Sean Lochner. We are the Philly Pulse, and we'll catch you next time.
Killer. Awesome.